The day my husband called me useless, I had $847 in my checking account and a rejected patent application sitting in my email. 6 months later, I sold that same patent for $97 million. But Trevor had no idea what was coming when he decided to destroy me at my lowest point. Let me tell you exactly how we got here. Let us know in the comments where you're watching. If this resonated, don't miss out on subscribing because tomorrow I'm sharing something that will completely change how you think about this topic. It was a Thursday morning in October when everything fell apart. I still remember the exact moment because I was stirring honey into my coffee, watching the golden swirls dissolve, when my phone buzzed with the call that would change everything. Cassandra Walsh. The voice was crisp, professional, completely devoid of warmth. "Yes, this is Cassie," I replied, setting down my spoon. "This is Janet from Meridian Tech Solutions. I'm calling to inform you that your position has been eliminated effective immediately. Your final paycheck will be direct deposited by Friday." Just like that. 8 years of biomedical engineering, leading a team that developed 3 breakthrough medical devices, countless late nights perfecting prototypes that saved the company millions in development costs, gone in a 30-second phone call. No meeting, no explanation, no acknowledgement of what I'd contributed. I sat there staring at my coffee, the honey now completely dissolved, leaving no trace it had ever been separate from the liquid. That's exactly how I felt, like I was disappearing. When Trevor walked into our kitchen 20 minutes later, adjusting his tie for another day at his prestigious law firm downtown, I was still holding the phone. "What's wrong with you?" he asked, not even looking at me as he grabbed his travel mug. "I got laid off," I said quietly. "Meridian eliminated my position." He froze, his hand halfway to the coffee pot. Then he turned, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Not sympathy, not concern, but calculation. "What do you mean eliminated?" His voice carried an edge that made my stomach drop. "Budget cuts. The whole biomedical division is being restructured. It's not permanent. I'll find something else." Trevor's laugh was sharp, bitter. "Find something else? Cassie, you're 34 years old. You've been at one company for 8 years. Do you have any idea what the job market looks like right now?" I felt heat creep up my neck. "I have experience, I have patents pending, I have references." Pending patents? You mean those hobby projects you've been wasting time on instead of focusing on your actual career? The ones the patent office keeps rejecting? The words hit like physical blows. Those hobby projects were medical devices I'd been perfecting for 3 years. A revolutionary glucose monitoring system that could eliminate daily finger pricks for diabetics. The patent office had rejected my first 2 applications, but I'd been refining the technology, making it better, stronger, more precise. "They're not hobbies, Trevor. This technology could help millions of people." "Help millions of people?" His voice dripped with condescension. "Cassie, wake up. You just got fired from the only job you've ever had. We have a mortgage, we have car payments, we have real responsibilities, and you're talking about helping people." I stared at him, this man I'd been married to for 6 years, and realized I was looking at a stranger. When had he become this person? When had his ambition turned into cruelty? "I'll figure it out," I said quietly. "We'll be okay." Trevor grabbed his briefcase, his movements sharp with frustration. "No, Cassie. I'll figure it out. I'll carry us while you play inventor in your little home office. But let's be honest about what you are right now." He paused at the doorway, looking back at me with eyes that held no warmth, no partnership, no love. "You're useless." The word hung in the air long after he left. Useless. Not unemployed, not temporarily set back, not facing a challenge. Useless. I sat in that kitchen for 2 hours, watching the morning light shift across the walls, feeling something fundamental break inside me. This was supposed to be my safe space, my partnership, my team. The person who promised to support me through better and worse had just delivered the cruelest blow when I was already down. But as I sat there, something else began to build alongside the hurt. A quiet, burning determination that started in my chest and spread outward like heat from a flame. Trevor thought I was useless. He thought my inventions were worthless hobby projects. He thought I was a burden he'd have to carry. I walked to my home office, the spare bedroom where I'd spent countless evenings and weekends perfecting my glucose monitoring system. The prototype sat on my desk, sleek and silver, no bigger than a wristwatch. 3 years of research, hundreds of iterations, thousands of hours of testing. The patent office had rejected my first 2 applications, but I knew they were wrong. I knew this device could change everything for people managing diabetes.
I opened my laptop and pulled up the rejection letter from the patent office. Insufficient novelty over prior art, they'd written. The proposed method does not demonstrate significant advancement over existing technologies. They were wrong. I knew they were wrong. But more than that, I was going to prove they were wrong. Trevor had called me useless on the worst day of my professional life. He had no idea that he'd just lit a fire under someone who had nothing left to lose and everything to prove. He thought he was married to a failure. He was about to discover he'd been living with a genius he'd been too blind to see. And when that patent approval came through, when the bidding war started, when the check for $97 million hit my account, Trevor would finally understand exactly how useless his wife really was. But that morning, sitting in my office with rejection letters and an empty bank account, all I had was rage, determination, and the absolute certainty that I was going to make him eat every single word. If you're loving what you're hearing, smash that subscribe button. It really keeps us going. All right, let's jump back in. The next few days revealed just how deep Trevor's contempt ran and how completely I'd been blind to the man I'd married. That Friday, when my final paycheck from Meridian hit our joint account, Trevor was waiting with a spreadsheet. Not a hug, not words of encouragement, but a color-coded Excel document breaking down our monthly expenses. "Sit down," he said, laptop open on our dining table like we were having a business meeting instead of a conversation between husband and wife. "We need to discuss your situation." My situation, not our situation, mine. He continued, "I've calculated our bare minimum monthly expenses. Mortgage, utilities, insurance, car payments, groceries. We're looking at $8,400 a month just to survive. My salary covers that, barely, but there's no room for extras." I stared at the spreadsheet, seeing our life reduced to numbers and categories. "What do you mean by extras?" Trevor's finger moved down the screen. "Your yoga classes, gone. Date nights, gone. The cleaning service, gone. That monthly massage you get for your back problems from hunching over your little projects, gone." Each word felt calculated to hurt. "Trevor, I understand we need to cut back, but nothing." His voice was sharp. "This is what happens when you chase fantasies instead of building a real career. Do you see the insurance category? That's $1,200 a month. Do you know what happens if I lose my job too? We lose everything." "You're not going to lose your job," I said quietly. "How do you know?" He leaned back, arms crossed. "Markets are unpredictable. Law firms are cutting associates left and right. The difference is I'm valuable. I bring in clients. I generate revenue. I'm not replaceable." The pause before that last word was deliberate, designed to cut deep. And it did. "I brought value to Meridian too," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "The cardiac monitoring device I developed saved them." "Past tense, Cassie, past tense. What have you done lately? What are you doing right now to contribute to this household?" I thought about the prototype upstairs, about the third patent application I'd been preparing, about the breakthrough I'd made just 2 weeks ago that could revolutionize diabetes management. But looking at Trevor's face, I realized none of that mattered to him. It never had. "I'm working on the glucose monitoring system," I said. "The patent application is almost ready for resubmission. I've solved the calibration issue that caused the previous rejections." Trevor actually rolled his eyes. "Cassie, listen to yourself. You're talking about maybe, possibly, getting a patent approved someday for something that might potentially have value. I'm talking about reality. I'm talking about keeping the lights on." He pulled up another spreadsheet tab. This is what unemployment benefits look like in our state. $430 a week maximum for 26 weeks. That's $11,180 total. Do you see how that compares to our monthly expenses? The numbers swam in front of me, not because I couldn't understand them, but because of what they represented. Trevor had spent time calculating exactly how little I was worth. He made spreadsheets about my failure. I will find another job, I said. I have 8 years of experience in biomedical engineering. I have references from a company that just eliminated your entire division. Trevor's laugh was cruel. Cassie, wake up. You're not 22 anymore. You can't just bounce between jobs like you're still figuring things out. Companies want results, not potential. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling while Trevor slept peacefully beside me, probably dreaming about his color-coded spreadsheets. His breathing was deep and even, the sleep of someone who felt completely secure in his superiority. I slipped out of bed and went to my office. The prototype sat on my desk, and I picked it up, feeling its weight in my palm. Such a small thing, but it represented 3 years of my life, 3 years of believing I could make a difference.
I opened my laptop and read through my research notes. The breakthrough I'd mentioned to Trevor wasn't just wishful thinking. I'd solved a fundamental problem that had plagued continuous glucose monitors for decades. The calibration drift that made current devices unreliable after a few days. I'd eliminated it entirely. But as I sat there in the dark, Trevor's words echoed in my mind. Was I delusional? Was I chasing fantasies while our real life fell apart? My phone buzzed with an email. Dr. Sarah Kim from Stanford, one of my former colleagues who'd moved into diabetes research. The subject line made my heart skip. Your glucose monitoring patent? Urgent question. I opened it immediately. Cassie, I've been following your patent applications through my colleague at the USPTO. I know they've been rejected, but I've seen your published research. Are you still working on this technology? Because I just finished a preliminary study that suggests your approach could be exactly what we need for our FDA trial. Call me when you get this. We should talk. Sarah. I stared at the email, reading it 3 times to make sure I wasn't imagining it. Dr. Kim wasn't just anyone. She was leading the most prestigious diabetes research program on the West Coast. If she was interested, I looked back at the prototype, then at Trevor's closed laptop with its spreadsheets of my worthlessness. He saw failure. Dr. Kim saw potential. The next morning, Trevor found me already dressed and heading for the door. Where are you going? He asked, coffee mug in hand. To the library, I said, to work on job applications. It wasn't a lie, exactly. I was going to work, just not on job applications. Trevor nodded approvingly. Good, finally some practical thinking. And Cassie, he paused, looking at me with what might have been pity. Maybe it's time to be realistic about your skill level. Don't aim too high. We can't afford for you to be picky. I walked out without responding, but inside, something crystallized. Trevor thought he'd married someone weak, someone who would crumble under pressure and accept his assessment of my worth. He thought his cruelty would motivate me to become smaller, more manageable, more grateful for his support. He had no idea that his contempt was about to fuel the most focused, determined, and relentless period of my entire life. He thought he was teaching me humility. Instead, he was creating his own worst nightmare. A woman with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. The Riverside Public Library became my secret headquarters. Every morning at 8 a.m. sharp, I claimed the corner desk in the science section, spread out my research materials, and dove into the most intensive period of innovation in my life. Trevor thought I was job hunting. He'd even started leaving printouts of realistic positions on my desk: lab technician roles, quality control inspector jobs, anything that paid less than half my previous salary. Just something to get you back in the workforce, he'd say with that condescending smile I was learning to hate. What he didn't know was that I called Dr. Sarah Kim the day after receiving her email, and that conversation changed everything. Cassie, I'm going to be direct with you, Sarah had said. Your glucose monitoring approach is brilliant. The continuous calibration algorithm you developed could solve the biggest problem in diabetes management. But here's the issue. The patent office doesn't understand what you've created. My first two applications had been written in technical language that obscured the revolutionary nature of what I'd accomplished. I'd been too focused on the technical details and not enough on the practical applications. I have an idea, Sarah continued. My research team is about to begin a major FDA trial on continuous glucose monitoring. We need technology that can provide accurate readings for at least 30 days without recalibration. If your device can do that, and from your research, I believe it can, we could be looking at a partnership that changes everything. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, I had been rebuilding my patent application from the ground up, not just as a technical document, but as a comprehensive vision for the future of diabetes care. At home, I played the role Trevor expected. I nodded when he talked about realistic expectations. I thanked him when he highlighted job postings for positions that would pay $45,000 a year. I even went to 2 interviews for jobs I had no intention of taking just to keep up appearances. But every spare moment was devoted to my real work. I'd wake up at 5 a.m., 2 hours before Trevor, to refine my prototypes in the garage. I'd spend my library job hunting days collaborating with Dr. Kim's team via secure video calls, running tests, analyzing data, and documenting every breakthrough. The device was evolving rapidly. What started as a watch-sized monitor had become something far more elegant, a thin, flexible patch that could be worn comfortably for weeks. More importantly, I'd solved the biocompatibility issues that plagued existing devices. My version could maintain accuracy for over 45 days without any user intervention.
This is game-changing, Dr. Kim told me during one of our calls. Do you realize what this means for pediatric diabetes management, for elderly patients, for anyone who struggles with the daily burden of blood glucose testing? I did realize it. That's what kept me working 18-hour days while pretending to be a defeated housewife looking for any job that would take her. The hardest part wasn't the technical work. It was maintaining the facade at home. Trevor had become increasingly proprietary about carrying the family. He'd started making comments about how I should be grateful for his support, how other men might not be so understanding about having an unemployed wife. During our weekly grocery trips, he'd ostentatiously pay for everything while making remarks about how we needed to budget carefully now, that we were a single-income household. The emphasis on we was always pointed, designed to remind me of my dependence. But the most revealing moment came during a dinner party at his colleague's house. I was talking to another guest about diabetes research, my actual area of expertise, when Trevor interrupted. "Cassie used to work in medical devices," he said, with a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "She's got all these ideas about inventions that are going to change the world. Very creative." The dismissive tone, the past tense reference to my career, the way he made my expertise sound like childish daydreaming, it crystallized something for me. This wasn't about unemployment or financial pressure. This was about control. Trevor was happier with me dependent and diminished than he'd ever been when I was successful and equal. That night, I made a decision that would prove to be pivotal. Instead of just rebuilding my patent application, I started building a comprehensive business plan. Dr. Kim had mentioned that venture capital firms were desperately seeking breakthrough medical technologies. What if I didn't just license my patent to an existing company? What if I created my own? I reached out to my network from Meridian, carefully, quietly, one conversation at a time. Many of my former colleagues were also looking for new opportunities. Dr. Rachel Chen, a brilliant biomedical engineer who'd been laid off in the same restructuring, was immediately interested when I explained what I was working on. "Cassie, if this technology works the way you're describing, we're not talking about a product. We're talking about a revolution. How can I help?" Soon, I had a small team of collaborators, all working remotely, all contributing their expertise while I continued to play the role of the defeated job seeker at home. Rachel handled the manufacturing projections. Dr. James Rivera, another Meridian refugee, worked on the regulatory pathway. I focused on perfecting the technology and preparing for what I was beginning to realize could be the patent application of the century.
Trevor remained completely oblivious. He'd gotten into the habit of asking about my job search in a tone that suggested he already knew the answer would disappoint him. I'd show him rejection emails from positions I'd never actually wanted, and he'd shake his head with theatrical disappointment. "Maybe you're aiming too high," he'd say. "Maybe it's time to consider that entry-level position at the medical supply company. It's only $38,000, but it's something." What he didn't know was that I'd already had 3 preliminary conversations with venture capital firms who were extremely interested in my technology. What he didn't know was that Dr. Kim's FDA study was producing results that made my device look like the holy grail of diabetes management. What he didn't know was that I'd been offered a consulting position with a major medical device manufacturer that would pay more than my old salary, an offer I'd politely declined because I had bigger plans. Most importantly, what Trevor didn't know was that my patent attorney, a specialist in medical device intellectual property, had reviewed my new application and called it one of the most comprehensive and defensible patents I've seen in 20 years of practice. The application was scheduled for submission in 2 weeks. Based on the preliminary reviews and the strength of the supporting data, approval was virtually guaranteed. And based on the interest I'd already received, the bidding war would begin the moment that approval came through. But Trevor had no idea. Every evening he came home to find me dutifully cooking dinner, asking about his day, playing the role of the grateful, dependent spouse. He'd tell me about his cases, his billable hours, his importance to the firm. He'd mention how lucky I was to have someone willing to support me during this difficult transition. I'd smile and nod and ask if he wanted seconds on the roast chicken. Meanwhile, in my mind, I was calculating patent valuations, reviewing term sheets, and planning the moment when I'd walk into his office with a check that would make his annual salary look like pocket change. The beautiful irony wasn't lost on me. Trevor thought he'd broken me down to nothing, made me completely dependent on his approval and support. In reality, his cruelty had freed me from any obligation to consider his feelings when the time came for revelation. He'd called me useless when I was down. Soon, I'd show him exactly what useless looked like when it was worth $97 million.
The call came on a Tuesday morning at 9:47 a.m. I was at my usual corner desk in the library when my phone buzzed with a number I'd been waiting to see for 3 months. Cassandra Walsh? This is David Martinez from the United States Patent and Trademark Office. I'm calling regarding your application number 18547-892. My heart hammered against my ribs. Yes, this is Cassie. Congratulations, Ms. Walsh. Your patent for continuous glucose monitoring system with dynamic calibration and extended wear capability has been approved. You should receive your official documentation within 48 hours. I stared at my research materials scattered across the library table, barely processing his words. After 2 rejections, countless revisions, and months of perfecting every technical detail, it was finally real. Miss Walsh, are you there? Yes, sorry. Thank you. Thank you so much. After I hung up, I sat in stunned silence for exactly 30 seconds. Then I called Dr. Kim. Sarah, it's Cassie. The patent came through. Oh my God, Cassie, this is incredible. Have you told anyone else yet? You're the first person I called. Well, you'd better prepare yourself because in about 4 hours, when I submit our FDA study results showing your device's unprecedented accuracy over our 6-month trial, your phone is going to start ringing off the hook. She wasn't exaggerating. By 3 p.m., I had 7 voicemails from venture capital firms, 3 from major medical device manufacturers, and 1 from a pharmaceutical giant I'd only dreamed of working with. Word traveled fast in the medical technology community, and my patent approval had triggered something I wasn't prepared for, a feeding frenzy. The first serious offer came that evening. I was home, cooking Trevor's favorite dinner, and mentally rehearsing how to act like I'd had another unsuccessful day job hunting when my secure phone, the one Trevor didn't know about, rang. Ms. Walsh, this is Catherine Brennan from North Point Medical Technologies. I'm calling to discuss licensing opportunities for your glucose monitoring patent.
I'm listening, I said, stepping into the garage where Trevor couldn't overhear. We've reviewed your patent and Dr. Kim's FDA study. We're prepared to offer a licensing agreement with an upfront payment of $12 million plus royalties of 15% on all sales. $12 million. I gripped the phone tighter. That's generous. I'd like to explore all my options. Of course, but Miss Walsh, I should mention, we're not the only ones interested. I'd recommend moving quickly. She was right. By the end of the week, I had 14 formal offers ranging from $8 million to $28 million, but Rachel, who had been helping me navigate the business side, had some interesting intelligence. Cassie, I've been talking to contacts in the industry. The buzz around your patent is unlike anything they've seen. The consensus is that this technology could completely disrupt a $40 billion market. Some of these companies aren't just licensing your patent, they're trying to acquire it before their competitors realize what they're missing. That's when I made a decision that would change everything. Instead of licensing to the highest bidder, I was going to auction the patent rights to the company that could bring it to market fastest and with the widest global reach. Meanwhile, Trevor remained completely oblivious to the earthquake happening in my professional life. He'd settled into a routine of daily condescension that he seemed to genuinely enjoy. "Any luck today?" he'd ask each evening, not even looking up from his phone as I served dinner. "A few applications, still waiting to hear back." "Well, don't get your hops up too high. The market is tough right now." What Trevor didn't know was that I'd spent that afternoon on a conference call with executives from Johnson & Johnson, Abbott Laboratories, and Medtronic, the 3 largest medical device companies in the world. What he didn't know was that all 3 were preparing to enter a bidding war that would determine the future of diabetes care for millions of people worldwide. The breaking point came on a Friday evening. Trevor had been particularly insufferable that day, making comments about how I needed to lower my standards and accept that I was obviously unemployable in my field. He'd even suggested I consider going back to school for a more practical degree. I was loading the dishwasher, listening to his lecture about my failings, when my secure phone buzzed with a text from my patent attorney. "Emergency. 3 companies just submitted final bids. You need to see these numbers. Can you talk privately?" I excused myself to take out the trash and called him from the driveway. "Cassie, sit down if you can. The final offers just came in." "What are we looking at?" "Johnson & Johnson, $67 million, all cash, immediate transfer. Abbott, $73 million, plus ongoing royalties. But Medtronic," he paused dramatically. "Medtronic just offered $97 million cash with a commitment to bring the device to market within 18 months and guarantee worldwide distribution." I leaned against our mailbox, legs suddenly unsteady. $97 million. Not licensing fees paid out over years, a single payment that would make me one of the wealthiest women in the state overnight. "Cassie, what do you want to do?"
Through our living room window, I could see Trevor sitting in his leather chair, scrolling through his phone, probably checking his bank balance and feeling satisfied with his financial superiority. The same man who'd called me useless. The same man who'd calculated my worth in spreadsheets and found me wanting. "Accept Medtronic's offer," I said quietly. "Are you sure? We could probably push them higher." "I'm sure. When do we sign?" "I can have the contracts ready by Monday, final signatures and wire transfer by Wednesday." I hung up and stood in our driveway, looking at the house I'd helped pay for, the life I'd helped build, the marriage I'd invested 6 years in believing was a partnership. In 5 days, I'd be worth nearly $100 million. In 5 days, Trevor would discover exactly how wrong he'd been about everything. But first, I had to get through the weekend pretending to be the grateful, dependent failure he believed he'd married. I had to smile when he handed me more job listings for positions that paid 1/10 of what I'd earn in interest on my patent sale. I had to thank him for his patience and his support while I figured out my life. As I walked back toward the house, Trevor's voice drifted through the open window. He was on the phone with someone, probably one of his law firm colleagues. "Yeah, Cassie's still job hunting. Nothing yet.
I keep telling her to lower her expectations, but you know how it is with these technical types. They think they're too good for real work. His laugh was cruel, casual, dismissive. I paused at the front door, key in hand, and smiled for the first time in months. A real smile, not the careful mask I'd been wearing. In 3 days, when that wire transfer hit my account, Trevor was going to learn the most expensive lesson of his life. Never underestimate someone you've pushed too far. Never call someone useless when you don't understand their true value. And never, ever assume that because someone is down, they're defeated. The woman walking through that front door wasn't the same woman he'd crushed 6 months ago. She was someone infinitely more dangerous, someone with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. And she was about to become very, very rich. Wednesday arrived with brilliant sunshine streaming through our kitchen windows. I made Trevor's coffee exactly the way he liked it, scrambled his eggs with the precise amount of salt he preferred, and laid out his newspaper at his usual angle. Everything perfect, everything normal, everything designed to make this morning feel like any other. Except today, at 2 p.m., $97 million would hit my personal bank account. Trevor came downstairs at exactly 7:15, tie already knotted, briefcase in hand. He barely glanced at me as he grabbed his coffee. "Any interviews today?" he asked, the same question he'd been asking for 6 months, always with that undertone suggesting he already knew the disappointing answer. "Actually, yes," I said, buttering my toast with deliberate calm. "I have a meeting at 2:30. "Oh," he looked mildly surprised. "Where?" "Downtown. A consulting opportunity." Not a lie. Medtronic had indeed offered me a consulting position as part of the deal, though it was hardly the point. Trevor nodded approvingly. "Good. Maybe this time try not to oversell yourself. Remember, you need the job more than they need you." He kissed me on my forehead like I was a child who had finally learned to behave, grabbed his keys, and walked out the door. The same door he'd walked out of 6 months ago after calling me useless. The same dismissive confidence, the same casual cruelty, the same absolute certainty that he held all the power in our relationship. At 1:45 p.m., I sat in my patent attorney's office surrounded by documents that would legally transfer ownership of my glucose monitoring system to Medtronic Corporation. The contract was 47 pages of technical specifications, licensing terms, and financial arrangements. But the important number was beautifully simple: $97 million. "Last chance to change your mind," David Martinez said, sliding the signature pages across his mahogany desk. "Once you sign these, there's no going back." I picked up the gold pen he offered. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. My signature looked different somehow. Bolder, more confident, like it belonged to someone who'd just become one of the wealthier self-made women in the medical technology industry. Which I suppose it did. At exactly 2:17 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from my private banker. "Wire transfer confirmed and cleared. Balance available immediately. Congratulations, Ms. Walsh." I stared at the message, then opened my banking app to see a number that didn't seem real. $97 million and no cents. Available balance. For 6 months, Trevor had been right about one thing. Numbers didn't lie. But he'd been calculating the wrong equation entirely. I drove home slowly, savoring every mile of what would probably be my last trip through our neighborhood as Mrs. Trevor Walsh, unsuccessful job seeker. When I pulled into our driveway at 4:30, Trevor's car was already there. He had come home early, probably to deliver another lecture about realistic expectations and gratitude. I found him in his study, still in his suit, working on his laptop with the self-important focus of someone who believed his billable hours were the foundation upon which our entire world rested.
"How did the interview go?" he asked without looking up. "It went very well, actually." "Good. Did they give you any indication about salary range? I hope you didn't quote them anything unrealistic." I sat down in the chair across from his desk.
The same chair where I'd endured countless lectures about my inadequacies, my unemployability, my dependence on his generosity. Trevor, we need to talk. Something in my tone made him look up from his screen. About what? About what happened today. About what's been happening for the past 6 months. About what comes next. He saved his document and closed the laptop with theatrical patience. Cassie, if this is about money again, we've been through this. We're managing fine on my salary. You don't need to stress about finding the perfect job. Any job will help. I didn't get a job today, Trevor. His expression shifted to familiar disappointment. Oh, well, that's okay. There will be other opportunities. I sold my patent. The words hung in the air between us. Trevor blinked, processing what I'd said. What patent? The glucose monitoring system. The one you called a hobby project? The one you said was worthless? The one you told me to stop wasting time on? Trevor's face went through several expressions. Confusion, dismissal, then something approaching concern as he realized I was completely serious. Cassie, even if someone bought your little invention, it couldn't have been much, maybe a few $1,000s. That's not going to change our situation. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. The screen showed my account balance in clear, undeniable numbers. I turned it toward him. Trevor stared at the screen for a long moment. His mouth opened, then closed. He looked at me, then back at the screen, then at me again. That can't be real. $97 million, Trevor, cash in my personal account for my worthless hobby project. He grabbed the phone from my hands, studying the screen as if he could make the numbers change by staring at them hard enough. This is impossible. You can't just... Patents don't sell for... How is this possible? It's possible because you were wrong about everything. Wrong about my work, wrong about my value, wrong about what I was capable of accomplishing while you were calculating my worthlessness in spreadsheets. Trevor set the phone down with shaking hands. His face had gone pale, and for the first time since I'd known him, he seemed genuinely speechless. The past 6 months, while you were giving me lectures about lowering my expectations and being grateful for your support, I was perfecting technology that's going to help millions of people worldwide. While you were making me feel worthless, I was creating something worth nearly $100 million. I stood up, feeling lighter than I'd felt in years. I'm leaving, Trevor, tonight. I've already spoken to a divorce attorney, and papers will be served tomorrow. Since we live in an equitable distribution state, you'll get half of any assets acquired during our marriage. But this patent sale? I filed the original application before I lost my job at Meridian, which means it's separate property. All mine. Trevor finally found his voice. Cassie, wait, you can't just... We need to talk about this. We're married. We're a team. A team? I laughed, and it felt wonderful. Trevor, you called me useless when I was at my lowest point. You made spreadsheets calculating my failure. You told me I was unemployable and that I should be grateful you were willing to support a burden like me. I was trying to motivate you. You were trying to control me. You were happier with me dependent and broken than you ever were when I was successful and equal. Well, congratulations. You got exactly what you wanted. I'm no longer dependent on you for anything. I walked toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Trevor? That consulting opportunity I mentioned? Medtronic offered me a position as Chief Innovation Officer at $800,000 a year plus equity. I turned it down. I'm starting my own company instead. His face went through one final transformation, from shock to desperate calculation to the dawning realization of what he had lost. Cassie, please, we can work this out. I love you. I was just scared about money, about our future. You love what you thought I was. Grateful, dependent, diminished. You have no idea who I actually am. I left him sitting in his study, probably already calculating what half of our house and his retirement fund would be worth. not understanding that all the spreadsheets in the world couldn't quantify what he actually lost. 3 months later, I was featured on the cover of Forbes magazine. The patent that changed everything, how Dr. Cassandra Walsh built a medical empire from her kitchen table. The article detailed my journey from unemployment to becoming one of the most successful medical device entrepreneurs in the country. Trevor tried to contact me exactly once, through my attorney, suggesting we discuss reconciliation. I had my lawyer send back a simple message: no thank you.
Because here's what I learned in those 6 months of humiliation, rage, and quiet determination. The best revenge isn't destroying the people who underestimate you. The best revenge is building something so magnificent, so undeniably valuable, that their dismissal becomes a permanent reminder of their own blindness. Trevor called me useless when I had nothing left to lose. I proved him wrong to the tune of $97 million. And honestly, that felt pretty useful to me.